Alright, so this time I want to talk about Nintex Data. So one of the exciting things that Nintex released a little while ago is this concept of storing your data inside of Nintex rather than having to use some kind of external system. So back in the day, I used to blog a lot about Nintex Workflow, Nintex Forms, and it was for Nintex for SharePoint or Nintex Workflow for Office 365, where SharePoint was that central repository of data. So I used to do things like demos of leave requests because it was a really easy process to talk about. Everybody knew what that process was. What I want to talk about now is back then it was based on having a SharePoint list where you fill in a form, it creates an item in a SharePoint list, and that event would kick off a workflow. Well, here's the thing, not everybody has SharePoint, right? Some people have Salesforce, some people have some other system. They still want to be able to build out their automated processes and still have that data somewhere. So what I did was I created 3 tables using Nintex Data. I created a table called VTLR leave request employees, and that's basically going to have a list of email addresses and email and employee names and their manager names and manager email addresses. It'll also be a leave request table and also an archive leave request table, which I'll talk about in a moment. So once I built these out, this is what they look like. I'll just show you the leave request and the archive leave request table. So I kept it really simple. Employee name, approval status, which is basically approved, rejected, open, which is the first status when you submit a request, and more data required. I have a start date, an end date, and a submitted date. If you're doing this, keep all of these date time rather than just date. I found it easier to work with date time field types. The archive leave request is exactly the same, has exactly the same fields. So what I wanted to do is somebody fills in a form and submits it, and that's the leave request, and then it kicks off a workflow. So there's my Nintex workflow. Here's a start event. It's a form. We are going to use these purple actions, which are in this section down here, which is tables, right? So this is Nintex Data tables. So I am creating a row and I am submitting all the values from that form into that new row. And I'm also storing the resulting item or row that was created into an object called new leave request row. There's a reason for that. I'll talk about that in a moment. I then have a query. You can see query a table action here where I'm querying the employees table to pull out the manager name and the manager email based on the current user's email address. The reason why I'm getting both of these is because when I assign a task, it's really easy to assign a task to an email address, but in the body of the email, I want to personalize it a little bit so I can use the manager's name rather than just an email address, or keep it generic. And then based on the responses, right now I'm just supporting approve and reject. I am updating that row that I created, and I'm setting the approval status to approved, or if it's rejected, I'm setting the approval status to rejected. The reason I stored the original object that was created from this created row is because I'm using it in this condition so I know which row I'm updating in order to set the approval status. So that's what that little condition over here is. So again, this is starting from a workflow that somebody has filled in a form, and you can have a URL or a link to that form somewhere on your website or somewhere on your intranet, and it makes it really easy for people to get to. Like maybe you have an HR intranet page, people will be able to click on that form, fill it in, and it'll kick off this workflow. Now obviously you can extend this workflow to do some other things, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but for now I'm keeping it really simple. Now over time, that leave request table can get pretty busy. So what I decided to do is say any leave request where the end date is before today, that leave request is finished. Whether it's still open, hasn't been approved or rejected, or it's approved or it's rejected, the actual leave request, the start date and end date, has already occurred. So there's no reason to keep it on the list, in a table. So I created this workflow. This is a scheduled workflow. So this will run once a day at 2 o'clock in the morning. It will query the leave request table, and it will look for every row in there, every leave request that is where the end date is before today, right? That means show me every leave request that has already occurred and finished. and I'm pulling out a whole bunch of data. I'm only using some of that in the for each loop afterwards. But then I go through this loop and go, for every record that was found, I want to create a row in the archive table, right, the archived leave requests, and then I'm going to delete the row with the ID of that specific row that I'm looking at. Right? So basically all I'm doing is copying and deleting. Copy this row from the leave request to the archive table and then delete the original. So that keeps the leave request table really neat, really tidy. Now, why would I want to do this? The main reason why I would want to do this is because I want to have something that actually looks at that leave request table and displays to me all the current leave requests that are open, approved, or rejected. I want to potentially be able to filter all those on those or sort them. And the way I would do this is with an Nintex app. So that's something for a future post that I'm going to do, but that's why I want to do this. So when I go and look at, let's go over here and look at my leave requests, you should see in there that there is one record. And while that's loading, I'm going to go into the archive leave requests and look at the data there as well. So here's my leave request table. You can see there's my name. It's currently open, it hasn't been approved, and the reason why that's still in there is because the end date is the 14th of November and it's currently only the 3rd of November, right? If I then look at the archive leave request, you'll see I have two in there. One was approved, one was rejected, but both their end dates are before the 3rd of November, so both of these were archived, right? So what I don't want to do is when I do build a nice page for leave requests, or potentially just for HR. If I want to do a leave request, I know as an employee, I go to the HR portal, and the HR portal will have a link or a form embedded on the front page for a leave request. It may have a list of all the leave requests that I've submitted, right, that are currently outstanding. And I may have another view where say, show me all my leave requests for the past, and that'll look in the archive leave request table. But it's a nice way to keep this neat and separate and clean, and also make sure that your main leave request table doesn't excessively grow over time. Think about having 500 employees, and each of those employees could potentially take, let's say, four different types of leave a year. There's 2,000 entries that would go into this one table. Now you are halfway through the year and you want to view all the workflows as maybe like an administrator or an HR business partner. You want to be able to see all the leave requests. You don't want to see 2,000 of them. You only want to see the ones that are coming up from today onwards, right? So this is a nice way to kind of keep that neat. So the reason why I wanted to show you all this is these 4 actions, create a row, delete, query, and update, are very flexible, very powerful, with the fact that you can do conditional logic in here when you're updating, when you're querying. You can store the results of creating a row. You can pull in variables from a form or from the workflow. Maybe it's something that you calculated. Maybe you queried a SQL database for some information. You can put that in here as well as part of a calculation. So the flexibility is there. Super powerful. This is not something that I had the ability to do just a few years ago, right? So this ability to now have data inside of my Nintex environment and not have to worry about going to some other system or some external system to constantly store and retrieve and update data. This is super powerful, super fast to be able to interact with Nintex Data. So hopefully this helps. In the future, I'm going to look at how do I surface some of this data onto my Nintex app and create a nice user interface for essentially an HR system. So I appreciate you watching this. Feel free to post any comments or reach out to me if you have any questions, and I'm more than happy to share these workflows if you want, but they're fairly simple. Thanks again.